How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Driving in the Dark. I was gonna record this last night. It was gonna be like my first official full episode. I didn't have too much to talk about. I was like, I'll review the new Charlie XCX EP. It's really good. She got Sophie on it. I can talk about that for a couple minutes. Maybe I'll review the new Nick Caution mixtape. He's getting some buzz. Or maybe I'll talk about The People versus OJ a little bit. Great show. Maybe I'll talk about baskets, because not enough people are watching that show, and the reviews so far haven't reflected how good some of it is, right? And so I'm thinking about this, like, what am I really gonna do for this first show? And then I'm at work, like a quarter to 10, step outside for a cigarette, get on Twitter, and what do you fucking know? Kendrick Lamar is dropping a new album. And it's like, damn. So I went straight to iTunes. It wasn't on Apple Music yet. I don't fuck with Spotify. So I went straight to the iTunes store, put down my $10, downloaded it, listened to it like 6 times. By the time I was home, I was like, I'm gonna postpone this recording until tomorrow when I can really get my thoughts together and think about the lyrics a little more. So we're gonna talk about this new Kendrick Lamar album, Untitled Unmastered, that surprise dropped last night. Um, ooh, it's good. I'll start with that. I just want to preface this by saying that this, of course, is not a full review. I'm recording this at like 1:30 p.m. So I've had this album like, well, less than 24 hours, something like 15 hours, and I was sleeping for maybe 8 of those hours. So, this isn't a full review. I'm not that obnoxious that I think I can review a Kendrick Lamar album, you know, after having only heard it like 7 or 8, 9, 10 times, something like that. But I am going to just give my first impressions on it, do a little reaction to it, break down the songs, talk about the ones I enjoyed the most. Spoiler alert, I like this shit, obviously. Come on, it's Kendrick Lamar. Alright, so first off, the album is called Untitled Unmastered, and all the songs pretty much don't have titles. They're all called Untitled with a number and then a date after it. This is sort of, at least from my impression, this is basically an outtakes collection mostly from the sessions before, like right before the release of To Pimp a Butterfly, or just a little bit after the release of To Pimp a Butterfly. The dates range, I think, from 2014 to 2016. I was a little confused at first because I was like, well, none of these songs sound like Good Kid, Mad City outtakes, but I was like, duh, August 2014, Pimp a Butterfly was probably done. Because, it came out at the beginning of 15. And that's basically what we get. It's an outtakes collection. I'm entirely willing to believe that's a red herring, that this is like a deliberately put together album and all that shit, and Kendrick Lamar is just fucking with us. Because he's the kind of artist that could get away with something like that. But for now, I'll take it at face value that this is outtakes, basically, that just didn't fit into one of his albums and doesn't fit into the next project he wants to do because they're kind of specific to Pimp a Butterfly. We've got that jazzy, funky kind of thing he was doing on that record all throughout this. 2 of these songs you will probably have heard before, namely Untitled 3 and Untitled 8. Untitled 3 he performed on Stephen Colbert's show a while ago. Everyone loved it, blew up the internet. Who wasn't fucking excited by that performance? And then Untitled 8 he performed on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon a while ago. I'll be honest, I didn't I don't think I checked out the performance on Fallon just because it's just me being me. But I felt like Kendrick kind of had a special thing with Stephen Colbert. It was like, Colbert is such a great dude. You're such a great guy. You go on the show, he treats you great. He loves you. And like, if there is with a rapper as smart as Kendrick Lamar, if or even Run the Jewels too, like when they were on Colbert. If there is any late night host that's gonna treat a great hip hop artist with the respect and intelligence that they deserve, it's Stephen Colbert. And so when I saw that Kendrick performed an Untitled another Untitled song on Jimmy Fallon. I was kind of like, aw, man. I mean, I get maybe he wanted to perform with the Roots or something, but I was like, how are you going to do Steven like that? He likes you, you know? Like, remember Run the Jewels went on Conan, and Conan wouldn't even do the hand thing, the gun and chain hand thing, but Steven did it when they were on, and it's just like, ah, man. I was hoping that would be a special thing between him and Steven. And I guess it's a little bit disappointing that we are getting studio versions of these songs. I'm glad to have them, but it would have just been such a cool thing to have just these couple really good songs that he performs live like once, and then we just never hear again. And then, in 20 years, when To Pimp a Butterfly 20th anniversary edition comes out, maybe we get them as some bonus tracks. But we got them, and I'm happy that we do, more or less. The first song we have on here, Untitled 1, I mean, I'm not going to say all these titles probably. Untitled 1 is basically Kendrick Lamar narrating the apocalypse as, detailed in Revelations. And he's got this really anxious, frantic kind of float going on. I like it a lot. I specifically want to highlight a couple lyrics. Atheists for suicide, planes falling out the skies, trains jumping off the tracks, mothers yelling, he's alive, backpedaling Christians selling for forgiveness, evidence all around us, the town is covered in fishes. Ooh, great shit. This is definitely one of my favorite songs on here. It's not, I don't think the beat is like extremely captivating, but Kendrick Lamar is a really great storyteller. And he kills it with this. One thing I want to point out, because people have been getting it messed up, there's a point in here where he says, it's happening. No more running from world wars. It's happening. No more discriminating the poor. It's happening. No more bad bitches and real brothers. And, I hate the music press. It's fucking terrible. It just pisses me off. I saw some article like an hour after this album came out. I can't remember who it was. It might have been NME or someone, but, no shots at NME if it wasn't you. Where they had like 8 different writers listen to one different song from this album and each give their little impressions of it. And their reaction to song number 1 was something about, well, Kendrick Lamar is still on his social activism thing, showing how aware he is, talking about, let's end discrimination against the poor. No, what he's saying with that lyric is that when Revelation happens, when the apocalypse comes and everything goes to shit and the world is over, all of these artificial distinctions like war and poverty and who's cool or not, all are going to disappear in, the holy fire or whatever. It's not some just statement of, don't discriminate. He's talking about all these things that we care about and struggle with just don't matter anymore when the apocalypse happens. And he ends it really well. His part anyway ends really well with this line where he says, all man, child, woman, life completely went in reverse. I guess I'm running in place, trying to make it to church. And then we get this little spoken word thing at the end. There's one at the beginning too, just as like this guy with a deep voice. I think it might be Punch or whatever, sort of seductively talking about a lamb and this kind of creepy sexualized thing. And then he comes back at the end and lists off, all this, get your money, do whatever you want. He says, just do whatever makes all of you happy in this bitch. Just take it all back before the lights switch. Really cool. Untitled 1, great song. Untitled 2, Kendrick's rapping over sort of a trap beat. And my favorite part in this is he refers to himself as Cornrow Kenny, which I think is really cool because, I think that verse is really cool because I've been listening a lot lately to a song that Kendrick was on before Good Kid, Mad City came out, namely Catch a Fade featuring E40, where he has this really cool sort of monotone, low kind of flow. Jumping off the front porch with a new approach. Don't approach me with the bullshit. I will move to a location where the brooms sit, so on. And he brings that flow back on Untitled too. And that Cornrow Kenny verse, he's doing that E40 flow again. It's really cool. Untitled 2 is basically Kendrick giving, a shout out to everyone who's on the TDE roster with him, all the stuff they're doing. There's a couple really good lines on here. I specifically like, it's a tidal wave, it's a thunder dome. Ho, ho, ho. Ooh, or seen black, turn them to burgundy. Ah, man. And it's also funny because at the end of this, well, it seems this way, does a Drake impression of that fucking stupid flow that Drake has been doing lately that I don't know if anyone likes it, but it's like he's fucking clowning on Drake, shouting out his crew. It's a good song. I enjoy it. And it sort of establishes this thing of sometimes he's talking to God, sometimes he's talking to the head of his little label, his crew. It's cool. And he says he's going to tell Obama to be more like Punch, the president of Top Dog Entertainment. All right, and then song 3. I really like the beat on this song. It's got this great little bounce to it. I was at work with my headphones in, and it came on. I just went, whew. Doing like a little Tyrone Biggums thing. Just, man, it's really good. It's simple, but it's got this just a bounce to it that I really enjoy. I believe this is the song that he performed on Colbert's show. On it, Kendrick sort of talks with 4 different people from like 4 different cultures or races. They could all be American. He talks to an Asian. He talks to an Indian, which I take to mean American Indian, not someone from India. He talks to a black man, and he talks to a white man. And it's provocative. It's pretty cool. When he talks to the Asian guy, he kind of talks about Buddha, about finding peace, about meditating, about sort of living life slow. He's sort of exploring how he can find happiness, what makes him happy through the perspective of each of these 4 cultures. And then the Indian talks about lands, about handing something down through the generations as sort of a form of happiness. And the black man talks about, how pussy is power and he should get laid and, fuck a different girl every night, stuff like that. Which is cool because it sets Kendrick up for a joke at the end of the song of the whole real and words don't die, we just multiply. Which, when he performed it on Colbert, he sort of turned it into like the sort of militant slogan of "We don't die, we don't die." Really cool. And then the last person he talks to is a white man, which is interesting because of the 4, the white man's pretty much the only one that doesn't have advice for Kendrick. The white man just says, give me your fucking money. I want a piece of your album, all that. A piece of mine, that's what the white man wanted when I rhymed telling me that he's selling me for just $10.99. Really good. And it's an interesting message because of these 4 sort of cultures or backgrounds. The Asian guy, the Indian, the black man all have advice for Kendrick, and the white man's like, let me hold that. Come on, give me the money. It's great. All right, and then Untitled 4 has introduces this sort of recurring little rough draft of an idea that appears throughout the album, where Kendrick's saying, they say the government mislead the youth, and welfare don't mean well for you, and they tell me my bills past due, and preacher man don't always tell the truth. By the way, pretty cool on Untitled 1. He took a shot at child molester priests. Fairly bold. But anyway, which leads to, head is the answer, head is the future, give me some help. Which is a great little thing, because it's, it's sexual in a sort of seductive way, but it's also presumably about, knowledge. Use your head, use your brain. That's the future. That's how we get through this shit, with knowledge. I don't love the beat on this, really. I mean, there's not much of a beat to speak of. It's sort of, what is there kind of has a synth that sort of reminds me of like the Nightmare on Elm Street theme song. It's a little bit weird, but anyway, moving on to song number 5. I think J-Rock is on this. I think Punch does like a little verse on this. Kendrick describes sort of going around his car, drinking and driving, fucking up the system. I ain't fucking with society. Justice ain't free, therefore justice ain't me. Which is cool because on the one hand, he's saying, like, I'm free in some sense because I'm rebelling against society. I'm free as an individual, but he's also saying justice costs money, so I can never get it. In his verse, he's driving around, getting drunk, says he has Taka vodka on his binocular. Great little rhyme. And he's sort of stalking someone back to their house. He says something about, why do you want to see a good man sad or a good man cry, something like that. So his character could be like stalking a woman that broke his heart or something. Now he's going to go to her house and blow her brains out in front of her kids or whatever. I'll probably have to listen to this a couple more times. Not too much notable on this song. It's pretty good. It's not my favorite on here. One thing that kind of stuck out to me is that he has a line where he says Genesis and capitalism just made me hate, which was weird to me the first time I heard it, because I was like, wait, you meant genocide and capitalism, right? And I thought about it, and I'm like, maybe he's saying Genesisism, like, you know, some perverted religiosity and capitalism are driving him to the breaking point. But so far, when I've checked the lyric websites that sort of take this shit down, everyone's spelling it like a play on genocide. So, you know, take that as you will. But yeah, that's a good line too. I'm passing lives on a daily. Maybe I'm losing faith. Genesis and capitalism just made me hate. Correctionals in these private prisons gave me a date. Professional dream killers. Reason why I'm awake. And then track number 6 is a little bit weird because CeeLo Green is on this song, which is kind of how you know it's old. And I love CeeLo so much. Whether it's Gnarls Barkley, that shit was great. Like Saint Elsewhere, great album. His solo album, The Lady Killer, is one of my favorites. It's a great fucking album, front to back. Obviously, his work in Goody Mob on the song Soul Food, the album Soul Food especially, is an absolute classic, undeniable. And funny enough, Macklemore shouted that album out on his new album, which I thought was a piece of shit. And it's just weird. It reminds me when the Kanye album came out. I was talking to a friend of mine about the song Waves. And I was like, man, it's weird to have Chris Brown on a record, right? Like, the only kind of people that have Chris Brown on a record anymore are like fucking Rick Ross and shit. Like these middle of the road, successful but not superstar kind of rappers, because I think most people kind of stop working with you after you beat Rihanna that hard. People kind of lose interest with you. It's weird to hear CeeLo on here because of his date rape conviction, where he slipped a woman a drug and had sex with her and then went on this weird rant on Twitter. And, you know, his music is so good that I would just, like, my life in general would be like 5 to 10% happier if there was some way if he was able to prove that he didn't rape that woman. But, you know, all signs seem to suggest that he did, which is very disappointing to me, I guess. And which makes it weird that he's on this, because usually a rapper of Kendrick's caliber, once you are convicted of, you know, date raping somebody or beating up your girlfriend, there's the guys that are on top kind of stop returning your phone calls. So it's weird to have CeeLo on here. Like, the last thing I can think of hearing him on was the last Scarface album. And that wasn't weird to me because Scarface was talking about this song he had with CeeLo before the date rape conviction. So that song was a couple years old, presumably, when that was on the album. But that Scarface song with CeeLo is better than this one. This one is Kendrick kind of probably doing like a metaphor thing. He's sort of talking to a woman, but it's also pretty clear that the woman is God. And the fact that CeeLo is on here kind of also drives home for me that this is probably a spiritual song. There's some good stuff on here. Look at my flaws, look at my flaws, look at my imperfections and all. Look how you think that my mystique is a round of applause and yours equally valued. He's sort of coming to a woman with, I'm flawed, but you love me anyway, and I love you so much that you just kind of have to assume he's talking about God. And then Untitled 7 opens up with this extended thing of just listing shit that won't get you as high as this stuff, like drugs, love, whatever. It goes on for like a good minute and a half with this little recurring thing of levitate, levitate, levitate. I think I've heard this before. It must have been on he might have performed this live on Colbert or Fallon or whatever. And that's pretty much this song's divided into 3 segments. That's basically the first part of it is This Won't Get You High, is this, and levitate and all that. And then we move into the second part of it where he's like rapping. And he's got some good stuff in here. I especially like the lyric, "Before you poke out your chest, loosen your bra." Or or there's a little line on here that a lot of people are talking about. I'm not going to put too much significance on it, where he says, "I could never end a career if it never start." Like, that could be a shot at Jay Electronica, who recently dissed Kendrick. But, if these songs are as old as claimed, it's entirely possible that all this shit was recorded before Jay Electronica took a shit on Kendrick. And even if it is aimed at Jay Electronica, I got too much shit going on in my life to really care about subliminals. Like, just put out a takeover, put out an ether, put out real motherfucking G's or whatever. Hit him with a full song. I'm not going to get caught in trying to parse subliminals every time they show up, because they're everywhere. And there's some other good stuff. A lot of what he's talking about in this song is how his success how he's sort of processing success in a more positive way than we usually hear from Kendrick. Like he says, "Black excellence, pessimist died, counting my coin." Or, "I blew cheddar on youth centers, buildings and bimmers, and blue leather." Good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff on here. Or I like he has a little line on here that I took as sort of a commentary on this generation's sort of shallowness or slavery to technology, where he says, "The murderous Capitol Avenue's looking like Evil Dead zombies with batteries to the head." A lot of good stuff on here. Not the deepest song in the world, but it's not shallow or anything. Just, it's not my favorite. And then the third part of it is this sort of live demo for that "head is the future" shit. Give me some help. Where it just sounds like Kendrick's got a couple of live musicians maybe just doing a steady little beat thing, like a little bass line and stuff. And he's just sort of freestyling the "head is the future" thing and singing it and crooning and being like, "This is a 15-minute song." And it's really endearing. I like it a lot. But, when I was a kid, I was listening to like 8 CD long Beatles bootleg compilations and shit, like the Revolver sessions or whatever. So I'm inclined to enjoy these rough, raggedy, half-finished, live acoustic kind of things. I thought it was really cool. I can see why a lot of people wouldn't like it. And then we have track number 8, which is a song he performed on Fallon. This is actually probably my favorite song on this album. It's really catchy. It's really funky. You could dance to it. It's almost a little bit disco, like in a good way. Like you just want to fucking move to this shit. And the chorus is really catchy. "Why you so sad, walking around with them blue faces?" Oh man, it just gets you on your fucking feet. And this is a really smart song. In the first, basically Kendrick is sort of talking about how he and others are so willing to like fuck their whole shit up for fast money, for an easy answer, just because it's a little bit harder to wait for the long term. And in the last verse, he talks about something he's talked about before, which was his trip to South Africa. And he's sort of talking to this South African kid who's like, you complain so much and you talk about being trapped in the ghetto and all that shit. Man, I live in a fucking hut. What the fuck do you have to complain about? You got crack, we got amphetamines out here. Your struggle is nothing compared to what we're facing out here. Anyway, but to backtrack a little bit, the first verse is Kendrick sort of talking about his own life and the way that he sort of exhibits those patterns of thought, his sort of shallowness and all that shit. He's got a line where he says, "Why you hate to work for it? The reason I never went to work for it. Seeing 9 to 5 was so jive turkey." It's cool. Second verse, he's talking about a girl he knows who's running credit card scams. She got a scholarship to go to college, but she sort of passed it up to try to get that fast money, running scams and being illegal, shit like that. And he's sort of reflecting on, if you went to college like 4 years, get out, you'd have a stable, better income. But she needs it now, so she's running scams, sort of hurting her long-term prospects for some short-term money. He's got a line in here I like where he says, "Shit ain't no money like fast money. Even today I'm considered a crash dummy." And then the third verse, pretty much the entire thing is quotable. Like I said, it's about him when he visited Cape Town in South Africa and sort of talked to kids there and realized, and it sort of put things in perspective for him because he's like, I'm from the ghetto, I'm from Compton, I've seen all this shit, I've done all this shit, I've been through all this shit, but that still just cannot compare to the levels of poverty you'd see in Africa or in Cape Town. And it's a lot of his sort of dialogue of a kid kicking knowledge to him about, are you fucking serious? Let's see, I'm gonna quote a little bit of it. There's so much to quote in this song. Somebody yells, "Kendrick American, they show is crazy," and I said, "Why?" Then he looked me in the eye and said, "You fucked up. You're banking on good luck, you wishing for miracles. You never been through shit, you're crying hysterical. You settle for everything, complain about everything. You say you sold crack, my world amphetamine. Your projects ain't shit. I live in a hut, bitch. I'm living to keep warm, you living to pay rent. And your pain ain't mine half the time. A brand new excuse ain't nothing to me. Bitch, I made my moves with shackled feet. Cape Town." And then I think Punch Gang sort of comes back and talks about how people are sort of content with just being self-pitying and all that shit. And sort of just reinforcing the themes of the last verse. Great song. Untitled 8 is, I'd say, my favorite. Untitled 1 and 8, probably my favorites. 8's a little bit better for me. I'm really liking this album, if you want to call it an album, since it is basically it's like Kendrick's More Fish, if you will. And I think I'm going to keep listening to it. I'll have a full review up eventually after I've had, some more time. Probably like Thursday or Friday, some shit like that. I'll put up a full review after I've digested it a little more fully. Good stuff all around. Kendrick has, done it again. Definitely check this out if you haven't. It's only 8 songs long. I think it's like half an hour long. Short album. So go check it out, because there's a lot, it's that thing of, I forgot better shit than you ever thought of. Like, these are his outtakes, and they're still so good. You just really need to check it out. And it's great to have studio versions of those untitled songs he was doing on talk shows. So, Kendrick Lamar, Untitled Unmastered. This has been my first reaction. This is Driving in the Dark. I hope you got something out of this. You can hit me up on Twitter at DITD Podcast. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can subscribe in the iTunes Store. You can follow me on SoundCloud. And if you got something to say to me, hit me up on Twitter, or you can send me an email at drivinginthedarkpodcast@gmail.com. And that's the show. If you don't know, now you know.